15 years. That's how long I wore the title of wife. And 15 years. I thought I had a family worth fighting for. To the outside world, we looked perfect. My husband, Daniel, was successful, well-dressed, charming. He had this aura that made people admire him, even envy me. And me, I played my role well. The devoted wife, the loving mother, the glue that held everything together. When I introduced myself at social gatherings, people would often say, "You're so lucky. He's such a catch." Lucky. That word used to sting because I knew behind closed doors, luck had nothing to do with it. I didn't just stumble into happiness, I fought for it, built it brick by brick, sacrificing dreams of my own to make his come true. I gave up my career when Ethan, our son, was born. It wasn't a difficult choice at first. Holding him in my arms, feeling his tiny fingers curl around mine, I thought I had everything I ever needed. Daniel promised he'd take care of us, and I believed him. I believed in him. But as the years went by, small cracks began to show. Late nights at the office, business trips that grew longer and more frequent, phone calls he'd take in another room. I told myself it was normal. Men in his position, high-powered, ambitious, they had responsibilities, stress, demands, and when I confronted him, he'd smile, that same charming smile that fooled everyone else. "Babe, you're overthinking. I'm doing this for us, for Ethan, so he never has to worry about anything." And I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. Because the alternative, the thought that the man I loved, the father of my child, could betray me, it was unbearable. So I pushed it aside, buried the doubts deep. After all, Ethan was happy. And wasn't that what mattered most? But deep down I knew. The signs were there. The late nights. The cologne lingering on his shirt that wasn't his. The way he'd get annoyed when I asked too many questions. Still I held on. I told myself, marriage is hard. You don't give up at the first sign of trouble. You fight. And I fought. Until the day came when fighting no longer made sense. It was the week of Ethan's 10th birthday. He had been counting down for months, excited for the party, the cake, the friends who would come over. But most of all, he was excited for his dad to be there. "Do you think Dad will help me blow out the candles this year?" he asked me the night before, his eyes bright with hope, and my heart broke a little because I didn't know the answer. But I forced a smile and said, "Of course, sweetheart. Your dad wouldn't miss it for the world, except he did." That day I decorated the house with balloons, baked Ethan's favorite cake, and watched as his little face lit up when his friends arrived. He kept glancing at the door, waiting, watching, asking, "Is Dad here yet?" I kept checking my phone, calling, texting. No reply. When we finally lit the candles, Ethan hesitated. He looked at me, his small voice trembling. "Can we wait a little longer, Mom? Maybe Dad's just late." I wanted to scream, to cry, to rage, but I held it in for him. I smiled, kissed his forehead and said, "Let's make your wish now. Dad will be here soon." But he never came. That night, after the guests left and the cake sat half-eaten on the table, I tucked Ethan into bed. He tried to be strong, but I could see the tears pooling in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, "does Dad even love me?" And that was the moment I knew. The moment the fight drained out of me. The moment I realized I had been holding on to ashes, mistaking them for fire, because while I was consoling our son on his 10th birthday, Daniel was across town with her, the mistress, And that was the night I decided he erased himself the moment he chose her. I would just make it official. The morning after Ethan's birthday, the house was quiet. I walked through the living room, stepping over popped balloons, discarded wrapping paper, and crumbs of cake that no one had touched after the candles were blown out. The decorations still hung limp, a reminder of a celebration that never truly happened. I sat at the dining table, staring at my phone. Dozens of unanswered messages to Daniel filled the screen. "Where are you? Your son is waiting. Daniel, please answer me." Not even a call back. Nothing. I knew where he was. Deep down, I had always known. But admitting it to myself, that was the hardest part. When I walked into Ethan's room, he was curled up in bed, hugging the teddy bear Daniel had given him years ago. His eyes were red from crying, though he pretended to be asleep when I tucked the blanket tighter around him. In that moment, I remembered all the times I had fought for this family. I remembered being 23, fresh out of university, with dreams of starting my own career. I had an offer lined up, my dream job. But when Daniel got promoted and suggested we start a family right away, I agreed. I quit, thinking there will always be time later. I remembered the nights I stayed awake with Ethan as a baby while Daniel slept soundly in the other room, claiming he had to be rested for work. I remembered balancing the bills, clipping coupons, cutting corners while Daniel invested every dime into building his career. I remembered telling myself, it's worth it. One day, he'll see everything I gave up for him. One day, he'll appreciate me. But one day never came. Instead, here I was, sitting on the edge of my son's bed, wondering how a man could forget his own child's birthday while parading another woman around town. Later that evening, Daniel finally came home. The sound of the garage door opening made my chest tighten. I waited in the kitchen, arms folded, my body trembling with a mix of anger and dread. He walked in as if nothing had happened. No guilt, no shame, just that same confident stride loosening his tie, dropping his briefcase on the counter. "Hey," he said casually, like he hadn't shattered his son's heart the night before. "Rough day at work." Work. That word sliced through me like a blade. Work, my voice cracked. "That's your excuse? Daniel, your son cried himself to sleep last night because you didn't show up. Do you even realize what you did?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Come on, don't make this bigger than it is. I had a late meeting, don't lie to me," I snapped. "I know where you were." For the first time, his composure faltered. His eyes flickered just for a second, but I saw it. That tiny crack in his armor. "I don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Yes, you do," I whispered. My hands shook, but I forced myself to keep speaking. "You weren't at work. You were with her. While your son was blowing out candles, you were holding someone else's hand." The silence that followed was deafening. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. Instead, he leaned back against the counter, crossed his arms and smirked. "You've always been so dramatic. Maybe if you focused less on inventing problems and more on being a good wife, I wouldn't need distractions." That word distractions made my stomach churn, as if his betrayal, his absence, his abandonment of his own child was justifiable because of me. I stood there, staring at the man I thought I knew, the man I had built my life around. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even capable of being sorry. He had convinced himself that he deserved this, that he was entitled to it. And that was the moment I stopped waiting for change. That was the moment I decided if he could erase us so easily, then I could erase him too. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was still the only sound, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and the steady tick of the clock on the wall. Daniel was already gone, probably left before sunrise, the way he always did when he didn't want to face me. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee in my hands, staring at the steam rising from the mug. My mind felt heavy, clouded with 1,000 thoughts colliding all at once. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw something against the wall until it shattered like my heart had. But instead, I sat in silence, because screaming wouldn't fix anything. Screaming wouldn't protect Ethan. So instead, I began to plan T first. It was little things I thought might give me control again. I opened a new bank account in my name, depositing small amounts from the grocery budget. I started keeping copies of Daniel's financial records, his emails, his business trip itineraries that didn't match up. I even began taking photos, tiny pieces of evidence that no one else could deny if I ever needed to prove the truth. It felt secretive, dangerous, but empowering. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing. When Ethan woke up, I found him in the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes, dragging his teddy bear by the arm. His voice was small, almost hesitant. "Is Dad here?" I knelt beside him, brushing his messy hair out of his face. My heart twisted. "No, sweetheart. He had to leave early." Ethan lowered his gaze, pressing his cheek into the worn fur of his bear. "He doesn't like birthdays anymore, does he?" That simple, innocent question crushed me. Because how could a child make excuses for his father's failures? How could a little boy shrink himself to fit into the absence his father left behind? I hugged him tight, whispering, "It's not you, baby. It's never been you. You're the best part of him. And of me." That night, after Ethan was asleep, I found myself staring at an old photo album. Pictures from our wedding day, 15 years ago. My younger self, in a simple white dress, smiling so brightly at Daniel like he was the only man in the world, and him, looking at me like I was his everything. Back then, he used to send me flowers just because. He used to hold my hand in the car, even at red lights. He used to call me at lunch just to hear my voice. I believed him when he said we were soulmates, that he couldn't imagine a life without me. But somewhere along the way, the flowers stopped coming. The hand-holding became an afterthought. The phone calls turned into excuses. And then came Sabrina. I still remember the first time I heard her name. A colleague from work, he had said. I laughed, teased him about how he always worked too much, how he needed to spend more time at home. He had just smiled. "Don't worry, babe. She's just a co-worker." But co-workers don't send late-night texts. Co-workers don't leave lipstick stains on collars. And co-workers don't hold your husband's arm like he belongs to them. I didn't want to admit it then. I told myself it was just my imagination, that I was paranoid. But now, sitting there with those photo albums, I knew the truth had been staring me in the face all along. The truth was this: the man I married was gone. Maybe he had been gone for years, and the only reason I stayed was because I thought Ethan needed a complete family. But now I saw it clearly. A broken family was worse than a single-parent one. A family where love had rotted away wasn't really a family at all. That night, I closed the photo album, placed it back on the shelf, and whispered to myself, "This ends with me." The cycle, the lies, The betrayal, it ends here. It wasn't just about erasing Danielle anymore. It was about rewriting the story of my life. The following week, I made an appointment. It wasn't for a doctor, or for Ethan's school, or for groceries like I usually juggled. It was for a lawyer. The office was tucked into the corner of a busy downtown building. Neutral walls, glass doors, the faint hum of printers in the background. I sat across from a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that was calm but firm. She listened as I explained 15 years of sacrifice, years of suspicion, and now undeniable betrayal. When I finished, she leaned forward slightly. You've done the hardest part already. You've admitted this is no longer a marriage. Now we'll focus on protecting you and your son. Protecting me. Protecting Ethan. The words made my chest ache with relief. For so long, I had been protecting Daniel's image, protecting his secrets. But now, I was finally allowed to think about us. Just us. I left the office with a folder in my bag, full of information about next steps. It felt heavier than it looked, like it carried the weight of my future inside it. When I came home, Daniel was already there. He sat at the dining table with a glass of whiskey, his tie loosened, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said. I froze. About what? He gestured vaguely. About last week. About your accusations. I stayed silent, waiting. He leaned back in his chair, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You've been acting paranoid lately, jumping to conclusions. Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to come home to constant suspicion after working all day to provide for this family?" I clenched my fists at my sides. Ethan's birthday wasn't suspicion. It was reality. His jaw tightened, but he kept that smug composure. "So I missed one party. Big deal. Do you know how many birthdays I've paid for? The toys, the school fees, the house we live in? You think all of that just happens without sacrifice?" I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that money didn't blow out candles. Money didn't hug a crying child. Money didn't fill the empty chair at a birthday table. But he kept talking. "You've let yourself go," he said flatly. "You don't try anymore. Maybe if you took care of yourself the way Sabrina does." I cut him off, my voice sharp and shaking. "Don't you dare say her name to me." The room went silent. My hands were trembling, but not from fear this time. From fury. From clarity. Daniel smirked again, sipping his drink. "See? Overreacting. You're emotional. Always have been. Maybe that's why I need a break sometimes." Gaslighting. That's what this was. Turning his betrayal into my failure. His absence into my fault. But this time, I didn't crumble. I stood tall, staring him down. "You can rewrite the story in your head all you want, Daniel. But Ethan knows. I know. And the truth doesn't disappear just because you pour whiskey over it." He blinked, his smugness faltering for the briefest second. Then he scoffed and turned away, muttering, "You'll never leave. You wouldn't survive without me." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because in my purse, tucked between my wallet and keys, was the folder from the lawyer's office. I already had my survival plan. That night, I tucked Ethan into bed again. He looked up at me sleepily and asked, "Mom, are we always going to live like this? With Dad always gone?" I kissed his forehead, holding back tears. "No, sweetheart," I whispered. "Not always," and for the first time in years, I wasn't just comforting him. I was making a promise. The first thing I erased was his smile. Not from my memory, that would take time, maybe a lifetime. But from the walls of our home. For years, our hallway had been lined with framed photos, our wedding, vacations, Ethan's first steps, family portraits, pictures where Daniel always stood tall, arm draped around me, the charming grin frozen forever. One by one, I took them down. I didn't smash them. I didn't burn them. I wrapped each frame carefully in newspaper and slid them into a box I labeled storage, not because I wanted to keep them, but because I didn't want Ethan to stumble upon shards of glass and broken smiles. When the walls were bare, I stood back and realized something. Without Daniel's face watching over everything, the house felt lighter, less suffocating. It was like I could breathe again. Next came the finances. I sat at the kitchen table late at night, papers spread around me like battle plans, bank statements, bills, tax records. For years, Daniel had managed everything, or at least, he told me he did. "Don't worry about it, babe. It's too complicated for you," he'd say with that patronizing smile. But as I combed through the numbers, I realized two things. One, he wasn't half as clever as he thought he was. And two, I was stronger than he ever gave me credit for. I moved money quietly, transferring small amounts into my own account. I cancelled the credit card in my name that he used for business dinners. I made copies of every document and locked them in a safe deposit box at the bank. Every move felt like a tiny act of rebellion. Every dollar I took back felt like a piece of myself returning home. Then came the little things, the things he didn't even notice. I stopped cooking his favorite meals. Instead, I made dinners Ethan and I loved. Spaghetti with extra cheese. Pancakes for dinner just because. Dishes Daniel always complained about as too childish or not healthy enough. I stopped waiting up for him at night. No more sitting in the dark, listening to the clock tick, praying to hear his car pull into the driveway. Instead, I went to bed early with a book, pulling Ethan close beside me when he had nightmares, and slowly, I began to see a version of myself I had almost forgotten. One afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in years. The woman staring back was tired, yes, worn down, but she was also resilient, stronger than she realized. There were faint lines at the corners of my eyes, silver threads in my hair, but there was also fire. I pulled out the lipstick I hadn't worn in years, the shade of red Daniel once said was too loud for wife and mother. I put it on anyway, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw not just a wife, not just a mother. I saw me. The cracks in Daniel's control widened. He noticed eventually. "Why are the pictures gone?" he asked one evening, his voice sharp. I shrugged. "They didn't feel right anymore, and this." He gestured to the dinner table, where spaghetti and garlic bread sat steaming. "You know I don't like this." "Then don't eat," I said simply, serving a plate for Ethan. The look on his face was priceless: confusion, frustration, maybe even a hint of fear. For the first time, he realized I wasn't bending to his every word. And when he tried to reach for me later that night, brushing his hand against my arm like nothing had changed, I stepped back. No, just that one word. But it carried 15 years of exhaustion, 15 years of betrayal, 15 years of silence finally breaking. He narrowed his eyes, his voice cold. "You're really starting to push it, you know." I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Daniel, you are." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Ethan asleep in the next room. The lawyer's folder was still hidden in my bag. Divorce papers weren't signed yet. The fight wasn't over, but something inside me had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid of losing myself if I stayed. The weeks that followed were like living in a fog. I would wake up, make breakfast for Daniel, pack his school bag, drop him off, and then return to an empty, echoing house. Every wall whispered of Alex. Every corner held a memory of us 15 years of my life threaded into this space. But as I folded laundry one evening, I realized something strange. The silence no longer hurt as much as it once did. Instead, it gave me a strange kind of peace. For the first time, I wasn't walking on eggshells, waiting for Alex to come home late, waiting for him to shrug me off with excuses, waiting for disappointment to settle in my chest like a stone. One Sunday morning, I decided to take Daniel to the park. I packed sandwiches, his favorite juice, and a sketchbook because he loved to draw. As we sat under a tree, I noticed how bright his smile was when he chased pigeons, how carefree his laugh was when the wind tousled his hair, and it hit me. This was enough, he and I, just us two. We didn't need Alex's shadow looming over us anymore. As I sketched alongside Daniel, a voice startled me. "You're really talented." I looked up to see a man standing nearby, holding a dog's leash. His smile was easy, genuine, and his eyes softened when they met mine. "Oh, it's nothing," I replied, suddenly self-conscious, but Daniel was quicker to respond. "Mom's drawings are amazing." The man chuckled. "Well, your son clearly knows how to tell the truth." We talked a little. His name was Ethan, a single dad with a little girl who was playing on the swings nearby. He had kind eyes, but more than that, he didn't look at me the way Alex used to, like I was background noise. Ethan looked at me as if I was worth listening to. Later that night, as I tucked Daniel into bed, he whispered, "Mom, Ethan's nice. Do you think we could meet his daughter again?" I smiled. "We'll see, sweetheart. We'll see. But life has a way of testing us when we least expect it." A few days later, Alex showed up at my doorstep. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes wild with something between anger and desperation. "You've changed the locks," he snapped when the door didn't budge at first. "Yes," I said firmly, holding my ground. He pushed past me anyway, storming into the living room as if he still had the right. "What the hell is going on, Sarah? You're ignoring my calls, cutting me out. Do you think you can just erase me?" I stood taller. "That's exactly what I'm doing, Alex. Erasing you. For me? For Daniel?" His face twisted with disbelief. "You can't just erase 15 years. My chest tightened, but I refused to let him see me crumble. "I can. Because you erased us long before I ever tried." For a moment, silence hung between us. Then he laughed bitterly. "This is about my mistake. About that one night. My voice rose, trembling with all the rage I'd buried. "It wasn't just one night, Alex. It was years of neglect. It was choosing her over our son's birthday. It was making me feel invisible." "I'm done." Daniel padded out of his room, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Mom, Dad?" I crouched down, hugging him close. "It's okay, baby. Go back to bed. I'll be right there." When I looked back at Alex, something in his expression flickered. Regret, maybe. But it was too late. "Leave, Alex," I said quietly. "Before I call someone to make you." His jaw clenched. For once, he didn't fight me. He just turned and walked out, and as the door clicked shut, I felt something lift inside me. For the first time in 15 years, I felt free. But freedom comes with its own twists. Because while I was closing the chapter on Alex, I had no idea he wasn't ready to let go of me. And soon, his presence would creep back into my life in ways I never expected. The days following my confrontation with Daniel were strangely quiet. He didn't call, he didn't text, and for the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with his excuses or half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. At first, the silence felt suffocating, like an empty void echoing in my chest. But slowly, I began to see it for what it truly was: freedom. I poured myself into Ethan's life even more. I started taking him to his soccer practices, cheering the loudest from the stands, something Daniel never had time for. I volunteered at his school's library once a week, and the look on Ethan's face whenever he spotted me walking in it was worth more than any bouquet of flowers or fancy dinner Daniel had ever given me. One night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he whispered, "Mom, I like it better when it's just us. You smile more now." His words pierced me deeply, but not in the way I expected. I realized then that Ethan had seen more than I thought. He had felt my sadness, my forced smiles, my tears I tried to hide. And now, without Daniel's constant absence and betrayal weighing us down, Ethan was finally seeing me as the mother he deserved: present, strong, and genuinely happy. But as the saying goes, peace never lasts long when someone like Daniel is involved. A week later, he showed up at my door again, this time holding Ethan's favorite toy car. His eyes looked sunken, his clothes wrinkled, and for once, he didn't carry the arrogance I had grown accustomed to. "Claire, please," he said softly, almost broken. Just hear me out. I know I don't deserve it, but I can't stand being away from you and Ethan." I stood in the doorway, blocking his path. My heart was racing, but not because I wanted him back, rather because I was afraid he might disrupt the fragile peace Ethan and I had built. "You had 15 years to cherish us, Daniel," I said coldly. 15 years of birthdays, anniversaries, and little moments you could have chosen us. But you didn't. You chose her. You chose betrayal. He ran a hand through his hair, looking desperate. "I made a mistake. I thought she was what I wanted, but Claire, she left. She's gone. And now I realize what I threw away." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Of course. You come crawling back when she's no longer an option. You don't miss me, Daniel. You miss the stability I gave you. You miss the home, the meals, the loyalty, the love. But you never valued it when you had it." He dropped to his knees right there on my front porch. For a moment, my breath caught in my throat, because in 15 years of marriage, Daniel had never begged. Not once. "Don't do this, Claire," he whispered. "Don't erase me from your life. Don't erase me from Ethan's life. Please." "I'll change, I swear." But I had already erased him. Maybe not from existence, but from the place in my heart where I once kept him. I crouched down so our eyes were level and said in a voice steady and strong, "Daniel, you erased yourself. The day you walked out on Ethan's birthday. The day you chose her over us." I just finally had the courage to make it permanent. I closed the door gently but firmly, leaving him outside in the cold night. My hands trembled as I leaned against the door, listening to the sound of his muffled sobs fading away. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like the villain in his story. Instead, I felt something far more powerful: liberated. That night, I crawled into bed with Ethan, pulling him close. As he drifted to sleep in my arms, I knew with every fibre of my being. Our story was no longer about Daniel's betrayals. It was about us, about the new life I was building, one where I didn't have to shrink myself just to keep someone else comfortable. And though I didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning of a future filled with surprises, some painful, others beautiful, that would test just how strong I truly was. When the dust of divorce began to settle, I thought things would quiet down. But I should've known better. Life has a way of testing you right when you think you've regained your balance. It was a chilly morning when I received a call from the school. "Mrs. Parker, we just wanted to inform you that Ethan seemed a little down today. He mentioned something about his father again, and we thought you should know." The words pierced me. I had been trying so hard to shield Ethan from the storm, but the truth was, no matter how strong I tried to be, he was still a child longing for a father who had chosen someone else. That night, when I tucked him into bed, I asked gently, "Ethan, do you miss Dad?" His little voice cracked. "Sometimes. I just don't understand why he doesn't want to come to my birthday. Did I do something wrong?" My heart shattered. I hugged him tightly, fighting back tears. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and those mistakes have nothing to do with you. You are perfect, and you are loved more than you'll ever know." But even as I reassured him, I knew the reality. Ethan's father had made his choice, and I had made mine. Still, life had its twists. One evening, while shopping for groceries, I heard a voice behind me. "Olivia," I turned, and there he was, Daniel. The man who had once been my everything, now standing in front of me with tired eyes and a face etched with regret. For a moment, I froze. 100 emotions collided: anger, hurt, nostalgia, even pity. He smiled faintly. "It's been a while. How's Ethan?" I looked him straight in the eye, my tone firm. "Ethan is fine. He's happy. He has me." There was a pause. He shifted uncomfortably, as if searching for words. "Olivia, I made a mistake." Those words, the ones I once longed to hear, but now they felt hollow, meaningless. He was too late. I didn't flinch. "You didn't just make a mistake, Daniel. You abandoned us. You missed his birthday. You missed 15 years of trust for a fling. Mistakes are forgivable. Choices have consequences." He looked away, his shoulders sinking. I thought I was in love. But she wasn't who I thought she was." There it was. The inevitable unraveling of his so-called new life. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Not because of his pain, but because justice, in its quiet way, had found him. Still, I wasn't cruel. I simply said, "That's between you and your conscience. But don't come to me now, hoping to rewrite what's already been erased." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him in the aisle with his regret. That night, as I tucked Ethan in again, I thought about the encounter. The old me might been tempted to let him back in. But the new me, the woman forged in betrayal and heartbreak, knew better. Daniel had taught me a painful but powerful lesson. Never let someone make you feel like you're an option when you deserve to be a priority. And for the first time in years, I slept with a peaceful heart. Because I wasn't longing for what was gone. I was building something better for Ethan, and for me. I won't lie, divorce is messy, no matter how justified. And mine, after 15 years of marriage, wasn't just messy. It was war. Andrew didn't want to let go, not because he wanted me, but because he didn't want to lose. He wanted control, appearances, his reputation. For years, I had been the perfect wife beside him at every company dinner, every holiday party, every neighborhood gathering. To him, losing me wasn't losing love, it was losing face.so. He fought .t first. It was subtle text saying, "You're overreacting, we can fix this," or "Don't let one mistake ruin everything we built." But when I didn't answer, when I kept forwarding everything to my lawyer, the messages grew colder, angrier. "You'll regret this. You're ruining our son's life. I'll make sure you're left with nothing." But here's the truth. He couldn't take what I already reclaimed. My dignity, my peace, my future. And for once, I wasn't scared. Our son, Daniel, was watching all of this unfold with those big, questioning eyes. He wasn't stupid. He knew something had broken. One night, he crawled into bed beside me and whispered, "Mom, is it because Dad didn't come to my birthday?" My heart cracked. I held him close and kissed his hair. "Sweetheart, it's not your fault. Dad made choices that hurt us, and I need to protect us now. But you and me, we're a team. We're going to be okay." That night, for the first time in years, I slept without nightmares, but life wasn't going to let me move forward that easily. The first court hearing was brutal. Andrew arrived in his sharp navy suit, polished to perfection, his mistress seated smugly in the back row. My hands trembled, but I kept my head high. My lawyer laid everything bare: missed birthdays, bank transfers to fund hotel stays, messages leaked from his mistress bragging about how he belonged to her now. Andrew tried to twist it. "She's exaggerating. She's bitter. This is what happens when a woman feels neglected," she lashes out. The judge didn't buy it. My lawyer presented the evidence piece by piece, like stacking bricks into a wall Andrew couldn't climb. When we walked out, Andrew stormed toward me, voice low but venomous. "You're destroying me, and for what? A pity party? No man is going to want a bitter, middle-aged single mom." I froze, his words sharp, but then something inside me finally laughed. Really laughed. Because for once his poison didn't stick. I looked him in the eye and said, "I don't need a man to want me. I need my son to be proud of me. And that's something you'll never take away." His face darkened, but I walked past him, feeling taller than I ever had before. Weeks turned into months. The divorce dragged, but every day I found a piece of myself I thought was gone. I started painting again, something I'd abandoned when life became a carousel of dinners, PTA meetings, and business events. Danielle and I turned our tiny living room into an art studio. We laughed as we splattered paint everywhere, creating messy masterpieces that filled our walls. Slowly, I felt alive again. And then came the twist I didn't expect. One Saturday afternoon, while Daniel was at a friend's house, I went to the park with my sketchbook. I wasn't looking for anyone, I was just trying to enjoy the quiet. That's when I noticed a man sitting a few benches away. He had a little girl beside him, maybe 6 or 7, and she was trying to teach him how to braid her doll's hair. He was failing miserably, and she was giggling uncontrollably. I couldn't help smiling at the scene. That's when he glanced up and caught me watching. Our eyes met. For a moment, the world stilled. He smiled, gentle, genuine, without any of the arrogance I had lived with for years, and something in me shifted. I quickly looked back at my sketchbook, heart racing. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But for the first time, the idea of a new beginning didn't feel impossible. It felt hopeful. The following weeks were filled with small, almost accidental encounters. I would see him at the park when Daniel played soccer, or at the library when Ethan and I borrowed books. Each time, our eyes would meet, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the world paused, quiet, calm, safe. He never intruded. He never forced conversation. But there was something about his presence that made the heavy weight of the past months feel lighter. He reminded me that life could still be gentle, even after betrayal. One afternoon, while Ethan and I were sketching by the lake, he walked over with his little girl, trailing behind. "Hi," he said softly. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Not at all. Just trying to get some work done." His eyes crinkled warmly. "Mind if we joined?" I hesitated, then nodded. And just like that, we shared the quiet afternoon, talking about art, children, and the little absurdities of life. No judgment, no expectations, just two adults connecting. It wasn't love, at least, not yet, but it was hope. And after 15 years of betrayal, hope felt revolutionary. Meanwhile, Daniel wasn't gone entirely. He had started appearing at Ethan's school events, claiming he wanted to be involved. But Ethan, sharp as ever, didn't need me to translate the truth. One day, he asked me quietly, "Mom, do I have to let Dad boss me around?" I shook my head. "No, baby. He doesn't get to decide that. You and I make our own rules now." And for the first time, Ethan stood up to his father. At a parent-teacher meeting, when Daniel tried to lecture him, Ethan crossed his arms and said firmly, "Mom and I decide what's best for me, not you." I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost made me cry. 15 years of neglect had taught Ethan one thing: loyalty doesn't come from words, it comes from action. And he had learned it from me. Then came the day I had been waiting for, the final court hearing. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of compromise, betrayal, and silence, coming to an official end. Daniel walked into the courtroom looking like he had aged 10 years in the past few months. The mistress was nowhere to be seen, a subtle but telling absence. My lawyer presented the final settlement, fair and protective of both Ethan and me. When the judge finally said, "This marriage is dissolved," a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt the years of disappointment, resentment, and betrayal drain away. For the first time, I was truly free. As I walked out of the courthouse, I didn't look back. The past was behind me, and the future uncertain. Yes, but mine stretched ahead like an open road. And then I felt a hand gently touch my shoulder. I turned and saw him, the man from the park. His smile was reassuring, kind, and without expectation. "Congratulations," he said. "For you and for Ethan." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't known in years. "Thank you. It's been a long journey," he nodded. "It has. And I hope this is just the beginning for both of you." I looked at Ethan, waiting for me on the curb, and realized he was smiling wider than I'd seen in a long time. For the first time in years, we weren't just surviving, we were living. And that, I thought, was worth more than anything I had ever lost. The weeks after the divorce were unlike anything I had experienced before. For so long, life had been dictated by Daniel, his moods, his absences, his choices. Now, the days belonged to Ethan and me, and for the first time, I felt the freedom to make them ours entirely. Mornings began with laughter instead of tension. We cooked breakfast together, sometimes messy, sometimes burned, but always filled with joy. I watched Ethan explore the world with curiosity, unburdened by the disappointment of a father who couldn't prioritize love. And then there was him, the man from the park. His name was Luke. Gentle, attentive, and genuinely interested in both of our lives without overwhelming us. He never rushed closeness or demanded attention. He simply existed as a kind presence, like sunlight warming the corner of a room. Our conversations started as small, casual exchanges, books, sketches, playground antics. But slowly, I noticed something shifting inside me. My chest felt lighter, my smiles more frequent, my laughter more genuine. I realized that trust, broken for so long, could still be rebuilt, starting small, in moments of honesty and kindness. One evening, as Ethan was tucked into bed, I sat alone in the living room, sketchbook in hand, and found myself drawing a picture of our little family, just me and Ethan, and a sunlit park in the background. Luke was there too, sketched in softly, like a whisper of the future. It wasn't fantasy. It was possibility. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. No longer haunted by Daniel's absence. No longer forced to navigate betrayal and lies. I could finally imagine happiness again. And it was mine to shape. Then came a small but pivotal moment. Ethan ran up to me one afternoon, beaming. "Mom, I think Luke is really nice. He makes me feel safe." Taz pricked my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. He saw what I had begun to feel, that love, healthy and nurturing, was possible, even after devastation. That night, as I closed the door behind Luke, who had stayed for dinner, I sat with Ethan on the couch. "You know, Mom," he said softly, leaning against me, "I'm glad you didn't stay sad forever. I'm glad we get to be happy again." I held him close, feeling the weight of 15 years of disappointment fall away. "Me too, baby. Me too." And as I watched Luke walk to his car, I knew the journey wasn't over. There would be challenges, perhaps awkward moments, perhaps setbacks. But the foundation was here: trust, love, and the knowledge that I could survive anything. Because the woman I was before, quiet, overlooked, silenced, no longer existed. She had been replaced with someone stronger, someone brave enough to erase betrayal and reclaim life. And now, for the first time, I was ready to embrace the unexpected joy that awaited us. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting warm light across our home. I stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee, watching Ethan play with his toys on the rug. His laughter filled the room, a melody I hadn't heard in years, unburdened by disappointment or betrayal. It struck me then. We had survived. Not only survived, but we had flourished. 15 years of compromise, pain, and neglect had ended, leaving space for something new, something brighter. Luke knocked softly at the door, carrying a small sketchbook. "Morning," he said, smiling. "I thought you might want to see what Emily drew yesterday." Ethan ran to the door, eager to show off his artwork, and for a moment, the past, the betrayals, the heartache, the endless nights of worry faded into nothing. We spent the morning together, sharing laughter, stories, and sketches. The ease between us felt almost miraculous, a stark contrast to the tension that had filled our lives for so long. Later, as Ethan played in the backyard, I sat with Luke on the porch. We talked about simple things: books, sketches, favorite foods. And then he said something that made me pause. "You've been through so much," he said gently. "And yet, here you are, stronger, kinder, open to love again. It's inspiring." I smiled softly, letting the warmth of his words settle in. It wasn't easy. But I realized that happiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you take, something you fight for. He reached out and took my hand, a gesture full of promise and patience. "Then I hope we can fight for it together." I looked at him, then at Ethan, who waved from the garden, smiling wide. My heart swelled. I realized that life, unpredictable and sometimes cruel, had given me a second chance. A chance to rebuild, to love, to cherish, and to be cherished in return. That evening, as we watched the sunset together, Ethan leaning against me and Luke beside us, I felt a profound sense of peace. The weight of 15 years of betrayal was gone, replaced by hope, love, and the certainty that we could face anything together. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living, and I knew, deep in my heart, that this was only the beginning of our happiest chapter yet. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until the next one, spread love.